We have these defining moments that happen in our childhood, and then we make it mean something about us, and then we build our whole life as a way to never have that happen again. We've all come here with a divine purpose, traveling on a stream of cosmic dust from the stars into our mother's wombs, born into this precious life. It is no accident that you are here, my love, on earth, in this moment, in this body. You are here longing to find your place, to align with your purpose, to embody your passions and to live into the dreams of your heart. Yet so often we get caught, suspended in the tangle of life, not able to move forward, not able to find solace and comfort in a world that has forgotten the truth of our existence. As we begin to remember, as we peel back the layers, as we come together to uncover our unique gifts and reconnect with our authentic selves, we are able to see another way of being, a new possibility, a different life waiting to be lived. I have experienced on this complicated and wild journey of life that when we connect with the story of our soul, it will show us the magic of this life that we have been missing. It will open a window into the very heart of who we truly are, of who we came here to be, and gives us answers to our ever-asking why. Hello, beautiful souls. Thanks for tuning in today. Bart is here with us today, and he is bumping up against some programs and unconditional patterns that I like to classify as compulsions and aversions. And he's finding that he can't step into his authentic voice in situations where he wants to, and he's caught between either not saying what he really means and kind of just glossing over what's important to him, or getting a little bit too passionate or fiery about the conversation, and kind of bounces back and forward between these two ways of being. All the while, he knows what balance is in the middle, and he knows what he wants to say and how he wants to act. And yet he's caught in these patterns that what we discover are coming from childhood memories and situations. Some of his core memories of being a child are situations where he was ridiculed for his creativity, and where when he spoke up and asked for what he needed, he was laid into. So what this did was set up a program inside him that doesn't allow for his authentic voice and action to be available to him, right? As he moves into an uncomfortable situation, or if he's around people that he doesn't know, or when he gets triggered, he doesn't have a way to find this balance. So we explore these memories, and we look at how we can work with compulsions and aversions, how to notice them in your lives when you're caught in them. We also talk about being really logical as a way to self-preserve, right? And keep ourselves safe. And yet, so many of us have this really beautiful layer and creativity inside of us that is just wanting to get out into the world. And as we see with Bart, he's having trouble connecting them in a sustaining way. He can find them in moments, but is having trouble living from that place as his way of being. So this really beautiful call, think about where in your life is this happening, right? Where are your triggers showing up and not allowing you to stay in your authentic truth and hear your own inner authority and say the things that you know are true and correct for you? So before we dive in, I want to remind you about the Akashic Soul record readings that I'm offering and the self-study program called Eternal, Understanding the Story of Your Soul, that accompanies the readings. Akashic Soul records are really the story of your soul. There's intuitive Akashic readings, right? Which is what we do here on this podcast, which read the energy of now and this lifetime. And then there are Akashic Soul records where I access the Akashic library and pull your soul book. And from this, I pull the 5 primary pieces of information that I feel really relate to your purpose and your strengths and gifts that you carry in this lifetime. And what I really love about these reports is how validating they are and how they can show you where you are actually living your purpose right here, right now, that you are on the path. And it also gives you an expanded awareness of what you can grow into and how you can harness all these gifts and bring them into service for the world. And to accompany these readings, I've created a self-study program that you can work with alongside your report that dive deeper into the sections that the report covers and really give you some ways to work with the information in your life and some examples and some practices and ways that you can understand this information in a much deeper way so that you can bring it forward into your life. And at the moment, we are offering 50% off the Eternal program when you sign up for an Akashic Soul record reading. So I would love, love, love to see you on my calendar and to dive deep into this aspect of yourself. Enjoy the show. Thanks for being here. Hi, Bart. Welcome to the podcast. How can I help you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I have trouble sticking up for myself in a way that is equitable to all parties involved in like a conflict. I have a tendency to either like give myself away completely to the demands of others, or I take on a completely domineering place. I want there to be balance. I want to be able to hold myself accountable and hold other people accountable too. I find this happening in both like personal and professional settings. And I just want to be better. I just want to be better about that.
Okay, thank you. When you share that, right, the sensation that I get is like, it's almost like a clutching in my center, and then my throat gets tight. As in, like the way the information is, it's like there's the truth of you, the authentic self, right? The big self that is here knowing that you want to be different in this interaction. But then there's this more primal part of you that actually is what's being activated in those moments. And I see it like a seesaw where on one side you pull away and then the other side you like lean in really like, I'm here, listen to me.
Yeah.
And so it's like finding the place right inside you that gets triggered in that moment when what you, I imagine, would like to do is pause and then show up in sincerity and with your truth and the things that are important to you. So, what do you know about that place of your triggering?
It'll take some time to think about that.
Yeah. Might feel like a sensation, might be a thought.
I know that when you said that thing about the clutching of the chest, that definitely rings true. I find myself like when I'm most triggered, like I will hold my breath. And sometimes I'll become aware of that and still hold it anyway. Like I'll still tighten myself up there. And the thing about the throat as well, like it'll feel like something really wants to come out. Like I have so many things that I want to express and say, but like I don't let anything pass through. And so what ends up happening is nothing that I really want to say comes out. And it's a bunch of like edited weird stuff instead. Or maybe like
Yeah.
much information, but none of the concise information that I clearly really want to put out.
Yeah. I see you get caught in a program right there or a pattern, right? Like I would imagine too in that space, Like if that space is more with somebody that you're close to, you might find yourself that you're even just repeating things that you've said in the past in those moments.
Probably. It doesn't seem incorrect.
Yeah, right. Because like these unconscious patterns are playing out in our energetic field. And when you bump up against one, it's almost like the play gets pressed on the recorder or, the I'm seeing like one of those old time tape players and I was trying to be relevant, but I was like, it's not working. So, like pressing play on the tape player, and then it's like, oh, this is just the recording that comes out as I'm just getting eaten kind of by this program. And nothing that I really want to have happen is happening because you're clutched in this pattern. Oftentimes, right, these patterns, they start when we're really little and something happens, or there's a series of events that happen that undermine us or make it feel that it's not safe to authentically express our needs, our thoughts, our feelings, our concerns. And so we kind of put in place this pattern that's going to run when we feel really in this afraid place. So when you think about that sensation in your chest and your throat, and if you were to think back into your childhood, do you recall feeling that way back then?
Yes.
Do you mind sharing a little bit of maybe one of the first times you remember is?
I often go back to like two different scenarios. One, I was really, I want to say maybe 6 years old, and I hid under a table because my grandparents were upset with me. And so I hid from them for probably 5, 10 minutes. They couldn't find me. And then when they did, they were like, why in the world were you hiding from us? And I said, because you don't love me, or because like I feel like you don't love me. And the tongue lashing I got after that. Yeah, they didn't take very well to that. And I know that like when I hid, I wanted their compassion or their affection. And I got quite the opposite of that afterward. And I think that like after that, I kind of felt like there's nothing that I can do. Like this is helpless. Yeah. So that's one scenario that often comes to mind.
So, what I see in that, right, is this would be like you're working with two things. You have a compulsion that overexerts, and then you have an aversion, which pulls you back and draws you back and doesn't allow you to say what you want. So, would I be correct in that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that memory, right, it could tie into either of those in the sense like, okay, well, I tried to speak and I wasn't heard. So now I'm going to, like, my aversion is anytime things get a little spicy, I'm just going to withdraw and I'm not going to be able to speak. The other side can happen as well, where you were so misheard that you're like, I really need you to hear me. And so that more aggressive side wants to come out to defend this part of you. So we don't have to explore that other memory. You could even take that and put it into this model and explore it yourself. What I'm curious about is how much work have you done with that little 6-year-old?
How much work have I done with him? I don't think I've really like talked to him. It's kind of hard for me to I know the whole like inner child thing, like I believe in it and I know that it's real for a lot of people. I don't think I've ever truly experienced that for myself though.
When you say experienced it, meaning just not having tried it or have tried it and it didn't work for you?
Tried it and I felt silly doing it, so I have stayed away from it.
Why does it feel silly?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it feels unrealistic, I guess. Like it feels not grown up or like too sensitive. It feels like it's wrong to imagine in that way.
What's wrong about it?
I can't think of anything that's wrong with it. Well, as we talk about this, another like core memory comes up. I don't think that there's anything actually wrong with it, but it's like I'm protecting myself from allowing that. I think like for most of my life, my imagination has been belittled. And so now I belittle it for everyone else rather than embracing it. In kindergarten, we had an activity where everybody was supposed to draw like their future selves on like a piece of paper. So I wanted to be a scientist at the time. Like that's just the thing I landed on that particular day. And I drew a scientist and a beaker and had a bunch of like weird colors and stuff like that on the page, had a white lab coat. And I thought it was super cool and I couldn't wait to share it. And I went last at my table and all the kids like just ripped it to shreds. Like they were like, "You're not going to be a scientist," like blah, 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 blah. And just like made fun of me for like however long until the teacher came over and was like, "Everybody share what you did." And that sort of followed me all throughout school, just like identifying with like imagination and stuff like that. It had created adversaries for me often. And so when I think about talking to my inner child, like it makes me think about imagination or like it feels similar to like that kind of like daydreaming that's a little harder for me to access for the sake of protecting myself from that same ridicule.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have these defining moments that happen in our childhood, and then we make it mean something about us, and then we build our whole life as a way to never have that happen again. And this is where we start to pack ourselves so tightly into the boxes that we live in and that keep us limited and don't allow for the full amazingness of us to live our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found that being able to engage with these younger parts of us and tenderly draw them out really does have a lasting impact on our grown up life. Because when you're in those moments, right, where you're caught between too much and too little, really who's showing up is that little boy who wanted to be a scientist. And he's like, somebody hear me, and then the little boy under the table, he's like, but you can't speak. No, you have to be quiet because somebody's going to like lay into you again. Right? If in both those scenarios, you showed up in authenticity of your soul and your incredible creativeness, and people like pounded you and were like, no, that's not who you are. You can't be that. And that sweet little boy in you believed them. But now here he is being like, I can't handle this anymore. We need to be different. And you're here on this call with me. Your little boy got you here today, I would say.
Probably. Rebellion
Right?
every week.
Yeah. He's like, enough's enough. Come on. Let's do this thing. I need you. I need you to come and be with me the way that only you can be with me.
Yes. I think when things don't like look like ones and zeros or just like flowcharts, stuff like that, that program that you had mentioned earlier, like that program kind of like turns on, kind of like, remember, you're imagining a little too much, or remember, you're not being logical. Like, you need to turn that logic back on. You need to grow up. And I find myself in that space often, especially like after a long day's work, or if I like spend too much time like reading about politics or something, like, I just end up in that space.
Yeah, I can feel this really like beautiful creative fire in you. And it's like you keep putting the damper on it. Like, no, 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 that's not okay. Get back down in there. Let's come on. Let's do something practical. And yet it's like there's a couple sensations. And one is that it's starting to roar. It's like, you gotta let me out of the cage. You've gotta let me be part of who you are. But what I also sense is that it's almost like it's giving you, it's like a last effort. Like, come on, please listen to me. Please follow your heart. Please let me out. Like, you're kind of on this verge of where it's just going to be like, all right, I give up. I'll join you. And that would be very sad because it feels very alive and very like it has a message and it wants you to listen. It wants you to do something about it.
I can agree with that. I can definitely reflect on this week feeling that in like subtle ways.
Mhm. I think these are important times that we're living in. You know, so many things are shifting and changing. And it's like harnessing this part of yourself and allowing it to have more freedom in your life and more say in your life. It's like I see two pathways opening in front of you. And one is where you say, okay, I know it might feel silly at first, but I'm going to listen. I'm going to make an effort to go down this path. The other path feels like the sensation I get is like robotic. Like, okay, I'm just here going through the motions. Life is supposed to be good, but I'm not really seeing where it is. And okay, I'll just plod along. Like, there's two choices here for you. There's probably more choices as well. But the two that I'm seeing, it's like to just kind of be in this metaphor, right? Of which way are you going to go? Are you going to follow the fire and the passion? Or are you going to follow the let's be responsible and we can't daydream, we can't imagine?
And I would love for there to be a happy medium to that. I would love to be able to show up and just like, we're going to get this logical thing done, but you're going to be getting hit with like mythical fireballs the whole time. Be ready. Like I would love to just like exist in both of those places at the same time. And sometimes I really am able to. And I think it depends on like who's in the room and stuff like that, which is okay. But I think that like showing up as myself like all the time, no matter what I'm feeling, anything like that, like allowing all of that to exist, that would be optimal.
Mhm. And that is available to you. And I say that from my own journey. Like I experienced that I was very inauthentic when I was younger because of my programs and my patterns and the way that I grew up. And yet I worked it and I worked it and I worked it. And I really do feel that I authentically am who I am in all my moments. But I had to be willing to go be with that little girl who was desperately trying to be loved by me.
Would it be okay if I asked you a question?
Hmm.
What flipped that switch for you?
How do you mean, like authentic to not authentic? Or
Like, what made you decide it's time to sit with that little girl?
my life was falling apart? Yeah, it was hard. And I didn't want to continue living this way. The true me was like clawing to get out, is the way that it started to feel. And anytime I didn't honor her, I was just filled with like shame and guilt and all the things. And it just became too much. And I was like, there has to be another way. And there were a few of those defining moments in my life. And I remember them. They're in different stages as I got deeper and deeper into my healing journey. But they were very acute moments of no, something has to change. And I need to figure out how.
Well, hearing that you've gone through that and are on the other side like that, I'm happy because it feels like the same can happen for me too. And I definitely see like glimpses of that, like especially when I'm like around people I love that love me, and I don't know, like I haven't had too much time in front of the computer or something like that, but I certainly want more of it.
Yeah, and you can have it. It just requires that you include all of yourself, right? If you want to be authentically you, every part of you gets to be included in that.
Like the childlike part too.
Hmm. So much stuff happens in developmental stages. So we have 0 to 2, and then like 3 to 5, 6 to 9, 10 to 12, and then into puberty and up. And inside of these stages, we are developing emotionally, mentally, physically, and energetically. And when something lodges in one of those developmental stages, it's almost like if you think of it like you're building a machine or something, and then you forget. Like, it's making me think of Lego when my kid does Lego. Like, if you miss a part on page 43 and now you're on page 100, you got to go all the way back to page 43 and take it apart and put the thing in order for it to build, right? We're the same.
Oh, it's funny how that works.
Yeah. So these little parts of you, these developmental stages where these big core memories live, they are still looping in the background. And so you were built around them. And inside there, these programs are looping. And so you don't feel safe. And that's what happens in those moments. You don't feel safe because you're looping on a developmental stage that didn't get built properly.
I Is it okay if I cuss here? Sorry.
Sure.
Sorry. That was just real. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad that came through in a way that you were able to like really receive that.
No, it like when you said the thing about Legos, page 43 and stuff, like it made me think about building IKEA furniture. Like I had just been redoing my like office space, living space or whatever. And like there was this part that I just like broke really bad trying to skip steps. Or I wasn't trying to skip steps. I like had to backtrack and then like I ended up breaking something and then it was just like I tried to like it ended up taking like a month for me to finally like get the pieces I needed and stuff like that and then trying to rebuild it again and then realizing I like it's just like wow, like yeah, there really is no skipping steps at all.
Hmm. Yeah, that's another great analogy. So it's about going back, right? And working with those parts and helping them and making sure that they're fitted in properly. And then the whole can come together the way that it does.
Hmm.
It might be helpful. I have a number of podcasts where I've guided people through going back and being with their inner child. They might be helpful for you to get a framework or a reference of a practice that you can do. Everything can be hard in the beginning, but when we practice things, we just get better at it and it gets easier. And this is the same. Forming a relationship with the child inside you is awkward at first, as is almost every relationship in the beginning, right? But the more that we spend time with the person, the more that we show up and engage and listen and share, that relationship deepens and then it becomes very natural.
Mm, that also resonates. Or what comes up for me here is like for a long time, and even now, still, like sometimes I don't see myself as an actual person, like a person to spend time with. I see other people like they are people, but like I myself, like it's hard to conceptualize. Like I'm a person too. I can be kind to myself. I can be mean to myself in the same way that I can like be those things to other people. And like thinking about that, like I definitely want to be more intentional about connecting with myself in the same way. I think it would be a good idea to seek that out in your podcast more.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? We're the one person that we are with from when we're born to when we die. And yet we don't live in a society or a culture that teaches us that. You know, we're so disassociated from our bodies, from our thoughts, from the fact that we exist, right? Like everything is so external. Like we're externally referenced in so many ways. And the magic is in really coming back and being internally referenced and really formulating. I mean, I say the most important relationship in my entire life is the one I have with myself and with divine source, God, whatever you want to call it. But those two things go together for me, and they are like the number one thing I'm devoted to in my life. Everything else comes after that because everything else is better if it comes after that.
Mm, mm. I agree with that.
Well, how can I support you from here?
I think this just a lot of what you said I needed to hear. I needed reinforcement on that. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Does this feel like an okay place to land today?
I think so.